morning, everyone. Into the mic. Or be very loud. I can be loud. Yeah? Okay. I don't think we are using that one. I think we are all probably coming here to talk, so should be fine. All right. Everybody in the room can hear us okay? Amazing. We'll be starting in 3 minutes.
Can you all hear me? When you're standing up here, do you want the people on Zoom to be able to see? Oh, it's going to depend on your height. So maybe I'm just tall.
So they can see. Yeah.
Okay, I can move it. I didn't want to
set it up.
That's why.
I'm the smallest.
I was looking at you. I'm like, you're gonna cut. This is gonna cut your. It's gonna cut your face off
Yeah,
too.
and also the mic. Please feel free to.
To move the mic. Good morning, everybody. I think it's still morning for 10 more minutes. And welcome to this very exciting session. My name's Katie Brown. I am the founder and chief education officer of NGen, and we are very proud to sponsor this session today. If you don't know NGen, we are a platform that helps multilingual learners get literacy skills, digital literacy skills, workforce skills, all integrated into a personalized pathway that helps them get the English skills they need to accomplish their own goals. If something like that sounds interesting to you and the learners that you serve, we'd love to talk to you. My team is downstairs and running around the conference. You could be eligible to win a t-shirt that says multilingualism is a superpower, which I think most people in here would agree with. And with that, I will turn it over to this powerhouse panel today who's going to talk to you about Boston's initiative to equip everyone, I think, who needs them with digital skills. So that was my intro, which was definitely not 5 minutes. And here we go.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much to NGen for sponsoring this session, and thank you to the people of COABE for allowing us to come share today. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk to you about the City of Boston's Digital Literacy Initiative. You know, Coming from the morning session, I just want to extend thanks to all of you for all that you do for adult learners. It's only because all of us are committed to this work that we're able to succeed. So today we're going to share lessons from Boston in our efforts to strengthen digital skills for adults in adult basic education, job readiness, and workforce training programs. In this role, I'm Brooke Machado. I work for the City of Boston Mayor's Office of Workforce Development. I serve as the Senior Program Manager for Adult Education. In my role, I support our city's ABE programs and initiatives. And I'll be getting the session started off today, and I am also here with my wonderful colleagues who will be speaking. So that's Sandy here, and Sarah and Catalina, and you'll hear more from them later. And so, today you're going to hear about our agency, the Office of Workforce Development, that is called by this acronym here, OWD. And this has been a capacity building effort that we designed to help our adult education and workforce partners strengthen the digital skills training that they offer and help them deliver sort of digital skills instruction more effectively. This project comes through an amazing partnership through the City of Boston and World Education, which is an amazing nonprofit leader in the educational and technology spaces. So you'll be hearing from both the city's perspective and World Education's perspective as we've worked to co-design and co-create the Digital Literacy Initiative. You know, World Education, they are dedicated to improving the lives of the educationally disadvantaged. Our work in the City of Boston is to ensure that all Boston residents, especially those with low incomes, can fully participate in the city's economic growth. And I think that we all understand here that adult education and digital literacy are a piece of that work. So in our work, we connect people to job training, employment opportunities, and educational pathways that will support lifelong learning. Okay, so before we dive in, we'd love to get a sense of who's here. So show of hands. How many of you are instructors? Wow. Okay, so they said earlier in the general session that there are fewer instructors here than program leaders, and that looks like what it is here. Okay, how many of you are program leaders? Okay, several program leaders. How many of you are professional development staff? Okay, oh, we're so happy you're here. State agency staff? Welcome. Workforce partners? All right. Policy makers or funders? All right. Anyone I missed? If you didn't raise your hand? Okay. All right. So we welcome you. We welcome you all today. We're excited to share our work. We hope for the opportunity to hear from, what questions you have for us about this, and I'm interested to hear more from you all. And so, did I skip the agenda slide, or did it disappear? It disappeared. Okay, so there is an agenda that we prepared. We're not going to tell you what it is. But next, I know that we're going into project background and research. So I'd like to welcome my colleague, Sarah Sarui, and she's going to speak to you about that next. Thank you.
What happened to the agenda? No, it's okay. No, it's totally fine. All right. Well, good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Sarui. I'm the Director of Research, Evaluation Analytics with the City of Boston's Office of Workforce Development. We sit under a broader cabinet called the Worker Empowerment Cabinet, but we're so delighted to be here today to share with you a little bit about the DigLit initiative. And what I'll be doing is sharing a little bit of the background of the project and sort of the research and the evidence that underpins the initiative. The design of the DigLit initiative really, is an example of our cabinet's kind of broad research-driven approach to designing programs and policies and initiatives that respond to, real needs and test what works and then improve over time. So really a great example of sort of our continuous improvement model that really drives the way we do a lot of the work within the cabinet. So as Brooke mentioned, so DigLit is an initiative being implemented through the City of Boston's Office of Workforce Development in partnership with World Education. And the purpose of the initiative is to support the availability and quality of digital skills building in Boston's ABE and workforce development system. And the initiative really has like 3 objectives. The first, and what kind of sits as the foundation for everything else, is a focus on strengthening the digital infrastructure and competencies of ABE and workforce development programs so that they can effectively deliver digital literacy training. From that foundation, the second objective is to ensure that programs really interweave digital skills training throughout curricula, rather than sort of treating it as a standalone, a module. And finally, the third objective is really supporting the uptake of technology-based learning or technology-mediated learning, where really technology itself becomes part of how people learn, right? Not just what they learn. So DigLit is really grounded in a real and urgent need, both around connectivity and around skills that we see every day in the people our workforce development and ABE system serves. On the surface, Boston as a city, it appears, well connected with high rates of device ownership and internet access amongst the population. About 3% of households lack a device, about 5% lack internet, but those numbers really mask a deeper story. Among low-income households, almost 15% lack internet entirely, 8% roughly are smartphone only, 11% are cellular data with no home broadband, and only in other surveys that we've done, we found about more than 80% of households report that while they have a device, they don't have enough devices to meet their everyday, internet needs. And of course, access, as we know, is only sort of half the story, right? Confidence is the other half, and in a recent survey that was done by our Digital Equity Office found that 20% of Boston residents lack confidence using the internet to search or apply for a job. That number rises to 35% among public housing residents, 33% among government, those on government assistance, 30% among immigrants. These are exactly the populations that our workforce development and ABE systems, are designed to serve. Whoops. I'm not sure I can totally see from here what's moving, so I apologize. Okay, so I think I moved too quickly. These gaps are even persistent as demand for digital skills is now, ubiquitous. The majority of job postings, we kind of track this on a regular basis, the majority of job postings in Boston explicitly require digital skills. AI skills is rapidly following. We checked recently, AI-related postings grew 160% between January 2025 and January 2026. Even that 57%, though, of job postings in Boston that require digital skills really probably undercounts digital skills because they've become, so fundamental to how work gets done that many employers don't even bother, listing them anymore. But we are hearing from employers directly, from Boston employers that we engage with, that digital skill requirements are really penetrating every industry, even traditional industries. Building facilities managers, for example, they need to have, they need to be able to use building management software. All staff are expected to use email and video conferencing proficiently. So these are really baseline skills, as we all know. But they aren't baseline skills that our system has always delivered very well. And the pandemic is really when we started to pay serious attention to the extent to which our system was delivering digital skills and how. So we surveyed programs regularly during this period and found that nearly 60% of our workforce in ABE programs had no digital literacy component prior to March 2020. That number, obviously dropped by the time we hit 2022, at the height of the pandemic. But, the response that we found was uneven. 37% had developed their own program in-house from scratch. 16% had purchased a curriculum. 28% were really just offering it on an individual basis, one-on-one, when a client requested it. So what was really missing in our system was sort of consistency plus a shared understanding of the sort of standard of skills and how they should be delivered. And even when programs had a curriculum, it was often, as you can see from the pie chart, it was often sort of discrete, standalone module. It wasn't really embedded throughout the program or integrated into how they actually taught. So the gap wasn't just about whether programs had something, it was also about whether what they had was actually integrated and built into their learning systems and into the program and into how they served people every day. So that was really a big piece that was missing. Yes? I haven't done comparative analysis, but it would be interesting to do that. And our peer city is we usually compare ourselves to San Francisco as a peer city. New York is like a state, right? So we don't always compare ourselves to New York City, but it would be interesting actually to see what it looks like for San Francisco as another very high income city. Any other questions? And feel free to ask questions as go along. Okay. So what was missing is really this integrated, embedded approach to digital literacy programming, and that's really what DigLit was, designed to address. So the insights that we gathered from our partners, from surveys, from government research sources, and what we were hearing directly from the field really helped us to design a program with this sort of a clear theory of change that begins with the core conditions that we identified as gaps. So the first is technology, including devices and applications for staff and participants, limited staff capacity, and curricula and instructional approaches that were not fully equipped to meeting digital skill needs. And the DigLit approach really works across those three levels. So first is really helping programs identify and strengthen that digital infrastructure that they need to operate effectively. We're talking about hardware and software and internet access. The second is assessing and building the capacity of staff to use technology confidently and integrate digital skills into teaching and services. And third is improving the quality of curriculum and instruction. And we support programs in these areas through coaching and technical assistance, and Catalina will talk more about that, as well as self-assessment. We also provided flexible funding and really created space for shared learning across the system. And the outcomes that we're sort of working towards within our theory of change is really stronger staff capacity and more reliable program infrastructure, and digital skills really embedded throughout learning. all in service of this vision that every Boston ABE and workforce development participant has access to high quality digital literacy and technology enabled learning. And we have seen real results from this initiative that's now in its second phase. Our pre and post analysis from our first pilot, which engaged about 25 ABE providers, found that integration of digital school tools among our programs increased. The use of paid instructional software increased by 30%. But what's even more meaningful is that staff reported, is what staff reported themselves. 95% said they increased their knowledge of using technology to improve learning and teaching. 88% felt more confidence enhancing remote and hybrid learning formats, and 95% reported greater knowledge of how to embed digital skills training within the curricula. So not as an add-on, but as part of how they teach. And one concrete output of this work that Catalina will discuss a little bit more is the Boston Ed Tech Routine Library, which is this practical, hands-on resource featuring 70 ed tech routines that programs can put to use right away. So with that, I will pass it over to Catalina to talk a little bit more about the Digit components.
Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah described, there was a very complex problem that we wanted to address. So DishLit is not really about introducing more tools, but it's really about building the capacity of the programs to use technology, intentional, consistent, and in learner-centered ways. So let me tell you a little bit about the components of DishLit. So there are three main components on the model, and those are the gears that you see at the top. The digital needs assessment, which helps programs reflect on how technology is currently used across instruction, onboarding, staff support, and operations. And we will talk more about the digital needs assessment so you can see this in action. Then the action planning, where programs identify priorities and translate them into concrete, achievable steps. The implementation through EdTech routines. So instead of one-off activities, programs build repeatable practices that integrate digital skills into everyday instruction. At the base of this model, and these three elements are also critical, are program-based coaching, which is essential, and this is also why it's in the middle of the three components at the bottom, where we provide ongoing support and we ensure that the programs get the coaching in what they need based on their context, the context of their learners and their needs. And it helps programs troubleshoot their challenges and stay on the project over time. Then is peer learning community. So programs are often working through challenges in isolation, as we know. And there are different contexts, yes, but many of them have the same questions. So the peer community creates a space where those questions are surfaced and work through together. It accelerates learning. They see what others are doing and what is working or not. It normalizes the struggle. This work is not easy, as we know. So when programs hear what others are facing, that others are facing the same barriers, it reduces the sense of isolation and creates room for honest reflection. Peer learning also, as we know, is not theoretical. It is grounded in real classroom practices and real staff constraint and real learners. So that is also very important. And there is also a system layer in this aspect, and is that peer communities help knowledge from being held by individuals to being distributed across the network. So the peer community is also a very important element on the model. And then Sarah mentioned this, but flexible funding. So programs act on their priorities with this funding, and whether it means paying for staff, for additional time, investing on specific tools, programs now have the capacity to use the fundings in an intentional way. One of the biggest barriers that we have noticed, and this is not news perhaps for any of you, is time. So flexible funding can support stipends, coaching time, and also to ensure that they can participate in planning. And these are big things that are often overlooked, but are critical for change to stick. So let me pass it to Sandy to tell us a little bit more about the needs.
Catalina, there's a question.
Yes, yes.
And we have a few minutes.
What is the platform for the peer learning community?
So we bring them together.
Oh, so it's
Physically face-to-face, but there's also cohorts. So we also work in cohorts and they have an opportunity also to connect and share information. Yeah, the cohorts meet via Zoom. So there is like multiple ways, yes. And then we meet with them in person in the city in a common place. Right, this is super important, and I think, Sandy, you're gonna talk about this. So I'm gonna hold that question. It's a very important question. Thank you for asking. We're gonna pass it to Sandy because it's part of the model as well.
So you've heard a little bit about the research, you've had a chance to look at some of the program components, and now you're going to have a chance to experience the one of the major tools, which is the needs assessment, which is really the foundation that informs the action plan that Catalina mentioned in the components, and we'll talk about again later. To go back to the who, we've done this project looking at those components and the way that Catalina described it. We've done it once with a cohort of maybe 25 Boston-based adult education programs, housed mostly in community-based organizations, and they're part of a group that the City of Boston convenes called the Adult Literacy Initiative. The most recent cohort was also a group of Boston-based community-based organizations, but the focus was on an occupational skills training program that they run and operate. So when they came in to apply, they selected which skills training program they were going to focus on for the needs assessment, for the action plan, for the implementation. They could do more than one, but we wanted to first really understand and make sure they were thinking specifically about particular skills training programs. Did that answer the question of the who's? Sorry. This is a professional development capacity building project, so everything that we're describing is with educators or workforce development professionals. Yeah, all of this that we're describing. So did that answer the question? Okay, great. And then the who in this case is that, you know, like any initiative, of course you want it to be integrated and, you know, holistically implemented, but you also have to be judicious and thoughtful about how you use staff time. So, and we'll talk about this probably in the reflections later, but the coaches, and Catalina mentioned coaching as one of the foundations, the organizations had to come in with 2 designated staff people to work intensively on this. Ideally, they were bringing it back to their team, doing all of this really as a team, but they were the liaisons to all of these activities. And they tended to be managers, like a manager and an instructor. And then for the financial piece and the flexible funding, of course, the city was working with their finance people, but at every step of the way, encouraging, you know, the budget to be developed based on what they were learning through this process and the action plan that they elected to implement. Okay, so as I was saying, you're going to, you've heard a little research, you've heard a little about the project. Now you're going to really actually work with one of the core tools. So let me just tell you a little bit about the needs assessment. I'm going to do this. We, as I said, the goal of the needs assessment is to really inform the action planning, to really take a comprehensive look at what was going on in the targeted program. So there's 5 sections of the needs assessment. You can see them here. One is tech integration practices for face-to-face and remote service delivery. Another section is about staff digital literacy and technology integration skills. A third is about program support for staff digital literacy development and technology integration. A fourth is program support for student digital literacy skill development. And a fifth is about technology and infrastructure in the program. And I wanted to really kind of point out that of course we wanted to understand what they knew about staff digital literacy and their ability to teach technology and digital skills, but we wanted to understand how the program supports that, and you'll see that in the needs assessment, and that might be different from how we usually kind of put the onus on the staff or the onus on the program to support students, but sometimes we forget that there's an onus on the program to support staff in their capacity building, so we really wanted to call that out here. So those are the 5 sections, and what I'm going to have you do now is you can access the digital needs assessment online, but we have an analog copy, and you may want that in front of you because we are going to ask for you to work in little pairs or groups for about 10 or 12 minutes or so. And I'll just say this, the version that you're getting is the first version, which, as I said, was with a cohort of adult education programs and practitioners. The second version doesn't look that different. It just points a little bit more to, do you know the skills, digital skills needed in the specific occupation that you're training for? Have you gone to employers to get a sense of what's needed in that sector or in that industry? Of course, that's also important for adult education, but it was really a more important shift for the occupational skills training. So there's some slight differences in the current version. Eventually that will be available too, but this one was online. Few other, we focused a little bit less on like instructional and frameworks, kind of educator language, and focused a little bit more on workforce development and skills training language, but I think you'll get the gist here. So does everybody have either a digital copy or a hard copy? Okay. And so there are 5 sections. There's only about 10 or 12 minutes. I would love for you to work with other folks and together choose one section to look at together and to discuss. You may have time for more, but start with one. The good news is you have this. You can take it away and do more of it later. And then after you review for a few minutes, talk in your groups, what stands out to you about this assessment tool? You're in different roles, you're in different contexts. How would this work in your particular role and context? How might you use it? And what value or what benefits would it add to use an assessment like this in your context or in your role? Any questions about that? Okay, so please, if you're sitting by yourself, please do move and find some friends. And you have, let's see, about 10 minutes. Did you find anybody in the world? Online? No. Okay, let's come back together. Oops, let me go back here. All right, so then just popcorn style, we'd love to hear a little bit about, you know, what your takeaways from the tool, your impressions of it, what stands out to you, some things that came up in your conversation. Yeah. So let me just repeat for the folks online, just a question about sort of bifurcated results and how to deal with that, the strong digital literacy staff or programs and the ones that are less strong. And I realized that I didn't say something, and maybe this is what, Catalina, you were wanting to make sure I mentioned. This isn't a survey. This was a sit with your teams, talk it over, and I'm sorry that I didn't say that as clearly. All of those places where it says, like, why? So it really does look like this, which would be tough in a survey, right? So they do the rating, and a lot of times we say, focus less on the rating and more on the why, on describing the current and on, you know, what types of resources would you need to do that. So I'm really glad you raised that, because I'm sorry that I didn't make that clear. It kind of goes back to that question of the who. So at least the two leads were talking this through, and at least, and we were always trying to get them to really sit with your team. You're gonna find, you know, you want it to be low stress, low intimidation, find a way for the people who are on the different ends to feel okay about being out about that. Make it, you know, like a threat-free kind of space, or talk to people individually, but then, as Catalina was describing the coaches, we actually worked on this over many months, because we were like, think this, you know, where did you get this information? What's informing that rating? What do you think it would take to improve it? So thank you for raising it, but do you think if it was through conversation, it would be okay that it was bifurcated? Oh, yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I'm so glad you raised that. And one of the main kind of, you know, Catalina and I supported our team of coaches with kind of a training to get ready, and then also weekly meetings. And it was just like, just always push for more detail. What does that look like? Describe that, because that's where you want to get to, not are we a 1, 2, or 3. That was just like, you know, to have a rubric. Yeah, Catalina.
Yeah, I want to add to that specific point that you just made about like we have like a group of people that are here, another group of people that are there. At the system level, that information is critical, right? Because it can help you at the system level decide where are you going to put resources, or what kind of professional development needs to happen, what kind of conversations need to take place. But at the program level is really helpful, because it helps them identify those gaps or those opportunities. And we're gonna talk briefly about that in a minute. But so it serves those two levels.
And you could even have people do it at the local level and then do a survey if you really, I mean, you know, depending on the level of your work, you can't always get to that detail, that conversation, but you could at least encourage them to do it before they respond to you. Other things that stood out. Yeah. I was going to text you in the middle of this. Right. let me break for a minute and just relay. So the comment was just about, because there's the piece on the tech infrastructure, that there are people that we were working with who aren't the decision makers or don't even necessarily know how to go about looking at broadband or storage or loaning versus, yeah. So sphere of influence and what adjustments we can make, and within our sphere of influence, in the intake piece around student skills, make sure that we're asking about how all the ways that they're interested in, need to, and want to learn about technology, not just in careers. So I can't remember, is there a question like that, or are you also saying there needs to be one that? Yes, thank you. Yeah. And the best digital literacy assessment does have those kinds of questions. So if we didn't say it explicitly there, make sure that when you realize you need an assessment, that it does ask how they use technology. What are the examples? Yeah. So thank you. And so nice to see you, Sudi. All right, so anything else, a pressing response anybody wants to vocalize before we go on? So we didn't make many changes currently, and I think that's part of the conversation. I feel like there's links to definitions. We weren't talking explicitly about AI. I think we could add more explicit, but I think because it's open, it's not saying students you must do X, Y, and Z. I think it is evergreen in that way, but is that one suggestion you would have, is to be more explicit, or you're just asking? Yeah, but and that's the kind of stuff we talk through with the coaches. So take this, please modify it, use it. We won't talk as much about the benefits right now. I'll just give you some examples quickly of the kinds of needs, these won't be surprising to you, that were identified, that didn't have a consistent way to assess students' digital skills. You know, the idea of integrating the technology versus having it be separate was something that folks were trying to figure out how to integrate into their curriculum. Tech support, you know how this is. It's like so-and-so knows everything. We just go to them, and then when they leave, or if they're busy or feel overburdened, there's no other solution, so too informal. Staff digital literacy, again, going back to the program support, not evaluated, not part of job descriptions, not part of performance review, or supported so that staff can grow. And then no reliable systems to help students connect to getting their own devices or connectivity. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Catalina to talk about how we then, how programs use the needs assessment results.
Thank you. And let me go back also to the question earlier about digital skills, because what we are going to be talking about next is about the EdTech routines, and also a conversation about frameworks. What frameworks are you using? How are you identifying those skills? So it is part of the needs assessment if you were to complete the entire thing. So, so we talked about the digital needs assessment, 5 components. You already look at those, and it creates awareness, right? Like, what are some of those gaps? What are some of those challenges? What are some of those opportunities? And it helps programs see patterns. But awareness alone, as we know, doesn't change practice. So we needed to structure steps. Without this level of reflection, the complete exercise that we just did gets lost in competing priorities. And so and this is something that happens in adult education all the time, right? Like there are so many things, and so if you complete the needs assessment, you have like all these things that you want to do. How am I going to work on all of those? I don't have the capacity, I don't have the staff, I don't have the money. So how do we go about this? So we created an action plan. That's the next step after the needs assessment is, okay, you have all these needs, potentially. There are some things that you're doing really great, but let's look at how do we move that visual to action. And so we have first a prioritization activity where programs decide what needs to happen now or what can happen now based on their context, on the staff capacity and the learner needs. And then using SMART goal principles, they go into a table similar to the one that I'm showing you here, where they put an action plan. And so this even can be one of the steps in the professional development. For some of the programs that we were working with, they have heard about action plans, but they have never really put together an action plan. So this was an opportunity also to help them understand what an action plan really is and what the steps, what are the elements and components that they need to be talking about. So it's designed for programs to develop short and long-term goals and action steps to increase their digital capacity based on the previous identified priorities in the needs assessment. It ensures clarity and specificity in the objectives, so you can see it at the very top, what is the goal that you want to achieve. It enhances accountability and track progress over time effectively, which we hope will lead to greater goal achievement. And it ensures that the goals are attainable and aligned with broader program goals. So again, they are looking at their program, thinking about their program, thinking, what are we going to do and why? It also creates shared ownership. So as Sandy was mentioning, there is a team of people that we encourage to participate in the needs assessment. So that involvement of multiple roles at the program level also helps with alignment, ideally, and it helps change a stick beyond the one enthusiastic staff person that is really going for this. It wasn't always perfect, but that's what we strive to do. It makes coaching and funding actionable. So when we were talking about the needs assessment, they do it with the coach, but also is an opportunity, the action plan, to talk with the coach about what are the steps that you need to do. So, hey, I'm going to create a lending library. Okay, how? Where are you going to store the resources? How are you going to orient the learners? How are you going to lend? How long are you going to lend the devices for, right? So thinking about all these operational components becomes really important, and the coaching becomes critical in that point, and also the funding becomes actionable because now they know how they are going to invest the funding, right? And that was also one of the bigger questions at the beginning is, okay, we want the programs to have funding, but to do what? And how do we ensure that they use the funding in a way that makes impact in the program? So the action plan in this context becomes a tool to really ensure that the funding gets utilized in something that they have created. It's all different. All the programs are using the funds in different ways for their own needs, but they are using it towards something very concrete that we can see and that they can see. And it also obviously narrows the work into something that is possible, visible, and measurable. So some of the things that we observe, and you can see here, this is for the last cohort that we work with. So most of the goals really went towards devices and device support. And shameless plug here, this is what we often talk about, digital navigation, and we have a digital navigation course that you have some postcards on your tables. So a lot of the programs are already doing this. We talk about digital navigators in many contexts, but we forget that adult educators are often doing this role. Opportunities there for all of us to grow and to improve the practice. Digital tool integration, so this is digital tools across the organization, not only for digital skills, but also for digital skills. Digital skills curriculum. So the question earlier about, do we talk about what digital skills are needed now? Yes, in the context of their needs and their specific goals. Staff support, digital skills assessment, another big one still, and then employer engagement. And interestingly enough, only 2 people say that they wanted this to be a goal, but we were working also with workforce and workforce programs. Yes, in the back, there's a question.
I am looking at this
Yeah, so at the system level, right? At the system level, it allows us to see those blind spots, right? We, all of us, humans, we tend to grade ourselves higher in many skills than we actually are. So it can show you how perhaps their perception of the skills that they have is different from what you are seeing at the system level. So again, if you were to tabulate all the information at the system level across programs, you can identify these gaps or blind spots. At the program level, they were saying, you know, we need more devices because our learners are going into workforce programs and we don't have enough computers. They don't have a device. They don't know how to open their calendar, right? So in the eyes of the programs, this was their priority, not necessarily in terms of what professional development or system level, city level, state level we need to develop in order to support. But it's a good perspective. It gives you an insight as to how they are seeing things. All right, so the other big component, if you remember the graphic at the beginning of the 3 wheels, we have the needs assessment, we have the action plan, and then is the EdTech routines. And so really most programs don't necessarily struggle with lack of tools, but they really struggle because technology shows up inconsistently. So one instructor uses it really well, another avoids it completely, the comment in the back before, and what the learners experience is an optional or fragmented experience. So the EdTech routines is an opportunity and a strategy to ensure that digital use and digital skills are predictable and repeatable in the context of the learning. They are not supposed to be an extra activity. It becomes part of how learning happens every day. So if I was to ask you who has a cell phone and say, put your cell phone out and take a selfie. Can you take a selfie very quickly, right? So if you think about all what goes into creating that selfie, there is a lot, right? There is like, I need to find the app, I need to find the button to like reverse it, right? I need to take it, I need to go and find it, and now send it to someone else on WhatsApp, right? Like there's a lot that goes into there. But we can do this, you know, taking a selfie is something that we do pretty much automatically. So the idea of this EdTech routine is to create something that can be used and repeated often to develop that confidence in our learners. So routines, it builds more skills, they build confidence, they build independence, and the learners engage with the same types of tasks regularly, like logging into a platform, submitting work online, using translation tools, using organizational tools, and they translate those skills beyond the classroom, and that's where digital learning connects to real life. Just very quickly, these are the components of the EdTech routine, and so we have who's your learner first? Like, what are the needs of your learner? Then strategies before tools. So make sure that the tools that you choose for your class or for your learners make sense for the purpose, you know, everything that has to do with security and privacy and all those other things. Explicit digital skills. So we are using the Bridges digital skill framework to make sure that, you know, this EdTech routine emphasizes these digital skills specifically, and then clear employability skills. So be able to identify and describe how the routine connects and incorporates employability skills. And for this, we use the employability skills framework. Brooke, am I going to pass it to you here? Do you have anything to say here? I can say a lot of things here. All right, so just, so what happened at the end of the creation of all these EdTech routines, and so we worked with 45 Boston adult education and workforce programs. They all author EdTech routines, and we created an EdTech routine library. And what is really great about this routine library is that instructors don't have to create every time an EdTech routine. They can go into the library and say, like, I want to use either one specific tool, let's say, messaging tools, and they can just look for messaging tools and they can find all the EdTech routines that exist around that, or they can look for like what they want to develop or the skill that they want to develop. I want more communication, and so they can go there and find routines, and then they can adapt these routines. Again, routines are super short experiences in the classroom, any subject, so it's not attached to any subject. And then We have 14 routine categories, from assessment to communication to mobile devices to creating all sorts of interesting things. So we will invite you all to take a look at the EdTech Routine Library. And Brooke, I'll pass it to you.
And while they're switching, doing that, Eliana's handing out a one-pager with some of the information we presented, but also a QR code and URL to get you to the assessment that you used on the EdTech Routine Library and all that information.
Shout out to Eliana, who's one of the amazing World Education coaches. She has been supporting our programs through this learning, and she is supporting us right now. Thank you. And so in the rest of our time, you know, what we've just presented to you is essentially 4 years of collaboration and very intentional, focused work of the folks who are here today. And from the point where we stand right now, we wanted to offer some reflections to you. And so here we have what makes Diglit work. And so, you know, we actually had some great conversations to sort of get down to the essence and what we're hoping that folks can leave here today and think about if they want to incorporate any elements of what they've seen here today. And so first here is what makes it work. First, the tailored high-touch model. And so I think what we've explained here is that, and what's come up from you here who are attending the session, is that we know that one-size-fits-all models do not work. And so to have coaches available to work directly with program leaders and their teachers to meet them where they are and help them with what they need and work as a guide is essential. You know, so the coaching, the customization, and the flexibility are key. Second here is sustained engagement. This work could not be done in a single training. And so staff needs repeated exposure, opportunities to change their practice, and time to integrate tools and work with coaches through any trouble spots. Third here, structural support. So, you know, even strong engagement from a couple members of a staff team, it's really not enough. Programs need to make sure they have the resources to do this work. So that includes staff time and leadership buy-in. Without that, it is very hard to move any ideas into action. And then lastly, segmentation. So how you group cohorts, how you group the programs matters. When programs are in cohorts with similar contexts, it's easier to build a real community of practice and shared challenges and shared learning. And so, you know, when we were putting this together, it made me think of one program that's participating now. They offer a contextualized educator preparation program. So they are housed within several Boston public schools, and they train what they call parent mentors to work in classrooms. And that immediately came from, schools need bilingual staff, and there are a lot of parents that are bilingual. And so this program stepped up to say, we can train the parents so that they can support teachers in the classrooms. So they're one of our amazing programs. And, you know, so what happened with them, what they've learned along the way, you know, from the leadership and the participants have said they underestimated the low confidence of the staff in their training program. And so, you know, because they didn't even know about the low confidence, they didn't even realize that their staff was not taking risks. This project has allowed them, because of the support and the trust with the coach, to try new things. And so I got a text from one of them that said, "Have you ever heard of Canva? I am so excited to do something on Canva in the classroom with the kids." And they've also shared, like, you know, now they, some of them take on roles like communicating to parents. Now I feel more confident to send a message on the portal to parents about their kids. And so that's amazing. Okay, so what's next? What makes this work hard to sustain? And so first, it's been mentioned here already, devices remain a structural barrier. So it remains one of the biggest ongoing challenges that we see. Even when programs are doing everything right instructionally, access to reliable devices remains inconsistent. Some programs are well-resourced and their agency will provide it, and others say, I don't have anything to do this with my program participants. So we recognize that this isn't something that individual programs could solve or should solve. And so, you know, some of the conversations that we have now are looking at how can, you know, the system work to support these needs, because it's never going to go away. Folks need devices in order to, you know, enhance their skills, take that job interview, and perform well at work. The second point here is misalignment with funding frameworks. Again, we've had lots of conversations with this. So this is capacity building work, and sometimes it doesn't really fit neatly into boxes that funders shape. And so they're often looking for very short-term outcomes, and this is not short-term work. This is long-term work. We're building staff skills, we're shifting program practice, we're strengthening programs, and we're still struggling with how to paint that picture for funders, as we want to continue this work and we need funding to do that. Depth versus expansion tension. So I think we talked about that a little bit already. And so, yeah, so just a quick comment here. So in Boston, our largest sort of source of free devices for learners in our programs, they're an agency called Tech Goes Home. They had a long history doing very, very important work in Boston. They closed in February in the middle of this project. So in the action plans that were talked about today, many of the programs as a resource said, we will get our devices from Tech Goes Home to do this. And what we now are helping programs do is those devices never came. And so, you know, coming back to what makes it hard to sustain is even if you're depending on something in the system, in these times, it's fragile. And so that is an active problem that we are working to help our programs through. In the last minute we have here, what we have learned. Okay. I'm sorry. Did I change this slide? What we have learned, assumptions. Okay, I'll talk about our assumptions. Okay, so going into this work, I think assumptions have come up already, right? So what the program leaders assumed their staff could do, what the programs assumed their participants knew and could do. We even checked our own assumptions. We welcomed programs to work with us on this project, and we kind of assumed, oh, if you're a youth workforce training program, you must have a handle on this well. We've learned through this close engagement that that is not always the case. We also made assumptions about the youth participants in the programs, like they're digital natives, and so they won't need this type of support, or we really have to tailor the coaching to more specifically help those youth participants. And we came back, you know, when we meet regularly, and it's just like, wow, this is really eye-opening to see that the people that we assumed would be farther ahead or stronger have not been. And I think that this model is so amazing because of its flexibility to take in people and to meet them where they are, and I feel very proud of the work that we've been doing. So some mentions here. Digital literacy is evolving faster than we expected. AI wasn't even a thought when the project first started, and now it's all we are all thinking about. And yes, so I think that brings us to the end of our time. We hope that if you have any questions that you'll connect with us. We'll stick around here for a couple minutes, or you can find us on Whova. We'll have all of the presentation materials there on the app. We thank you so much for coming to hear us share today, and thanks for your presence and your participation. Thank you.